Just like that, we've hit the halfway point of the college football season, and we know nothing. We try to make sense of a playoff race thrown into flux and tell you who absolutely needs a win this weekend. We're breaking down a ranked matchup for the Big Ten on CBS Game of the Week and introduce you to the future stars of the sport. All that and so much more as the 247 Sports College Football Show starts right now. Into the 247 Sports College Football Show. I'm Emily Proud, and we have officially hit Week 8, which is hard to believe. In Week 7, it set the bar incredibly high with some of those matchups, but I think that we could reach it or maybe even surpass it with what we have on tap this weekend. But before we get to those matchups, let's talk about some news that's happening in the world of college football. And so for that, we bring in our college football insider, Matt Zenitz, to give us the latest and all the headlines. And Matt, this was breaking just minutes ago. It sounds like Georgia Tech will be without their quarterback, Haynes King. So what are you hearing on this front?
Yeah, just unfortunate development for Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech, which is 5-2, set to face number 12 Notre Dame tomorrow. They were already going into the game a double-digit underdog, and now have to go into that game against the Fighting Irish without their starting quarterback, who had been doing some very solid stuff during the course of that 5-2 start.
It sounds like Zach Pyron will be making his third career start in a tough competition, but they're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which I feel like will be a pretty fun atmosphere to get that start. Meanwhile, we got some headlines from Travis Hunter this week. He made an appearance on RG3's podcast, making his case for why he should be the Heisman Trophy favorite over Ashton Jeanty. This is what he said on that podcast. He said, I know that I can win it, but I don't know who's there. I mean, y'all see Ashton Jeanty. It's not like we haven't seen a running back that's good. He also goes on to say that Jeanty has 95 carries for 1,000 yards. So if I had 95 catches, how many yards do you think I'd have? If I had 95 targets on defense, what do you think that I'd have? I'm not going to ask you your opinion on this necessarily. I know we've been talking about this all week long, but you spoke with some coaches. What are people within the industry telling you about that quote?
Well, first of all, the presentation of not only that, but some of the comments he made after that could have been better. And there were some unnecessary comparisons that were made there between him and Ashton Jeanty. But for me, the first part of that was a very much fair and valid point that led to me personally thinking even more just about the transcendent stuff, I guess you could say, that Travis is doing. And it's actually come up now in several conversations throughout the course of the week with coaches around the country that as talented as someone like Ashton Jeanty is, as ridiculous as it is what he's doing and the production that he continues to put up on a weekly basis, Travis is doing something that we've potentially never seen before, which is not only going out there and playing 130 snaps per game, but he's legitimately performing at a first-round level on both offense and defense. And there's something to be said for that when it comes to deciding on the best player in the country, when somebody's doing something to a level that, again, we've maybe never seen before.
It's one of those things where the reaction was like, I mean, is he wrong necessarily? But like you said, I mean, Heisman voters.
The presentation could have been better. So I'm not saying the presentation wasn't flawed, but that first part of it specifically, he was not off base.
Yes, exactly. The point was well made. But like you said, I mean, Heisman voters are going to have to decide between the unprecedented versus the historic, because, of course, Jeanty's numbers are on pace to break a lot of, 40-year plus records in the sport of college football. So we'll see what happens there. This was a tough week overall on the injury front. We lost a lot of great players for the season. But when it comes to this monster top 5 matchup we have between Georgia and Texas, what can you tell us about the health status of these teams going into this one?
I'll start with some good news for Texas. Isaiah Bond, star receiver for Texas, status for him had been up in the air, questionable. And it continues to trend in a direction where the expectation at this point is that Isaiah will be available against Georgia, which is great for Quinn Ewers, great for Texas heading into that matchup against a talented Georgia team and a very talented Georgia defense. And I'll use that as a means to segue now to some not so great news for Georgia, specifically on defense. So Ismail Mundin, all SEC linebacker for them, potential early round NFL draft pick that we've talked about during the course of the last couple weeks, just regarding his status. He will miss this game, which will be the third straight game that he's missed. And the more unfortunate part of it for him and for Georgia is that it's still very much unclear at this point when he's actually going to be able to get back on the field from that foot issue that, once again, we've discussed at different points during the course of the last couple of weeks.
Also, hearing Uga will not make the trip to Austin. He is healthy, though. He's safe. He's just a little young, and this is a tough trip for him. But wanted to add that very important note there, too. Also, we're having a quarterback change at UCF. Former Miami quarterback Ja'Carri Brown will get the start over KJ Jefferson, who has been starting for most of the year. What are you hearing on that front?
So this is actually going to be the third starting quarterback in 3 weeks for UCF. Started the year with the aforementioned KJ Jefferson, former Arkansas transfer, shifted to a different quarterback last week, and then had Ja'Carri get in during the course of that game. And even though they lost, he had solid production, was 13 of 20 passing, and showed some ability there to the point that he will now get an opportunity going into this game against a ranked Iowa State squad to go out there and start and see if he can ignite a UCF offense, UCF team that has been struggling recently.
Awesome. Matt Zenitz, thank you so much for bringing us the latest news. We do appreciate it. Coming up next on this show, in a little over 3 weeks, we will get our hands on the first college football playoff bracket. So until then, we guess. Our latest guess is coming up on the other side. Stay with us. This week we have Brandon Marcello stepping in for Brad Crawford. So here is his bracket. He has Texas as the top team, Oregon as the Big Ten champ, but Ohio State, they're still in it as the highest ranked at-large. Miami, Iowa State, they get the byes. A&M is in as an at-large, as is Indiana, and Boise State is repping the group of 5. Let's welcome in Brandon Marcello to talk about his bracket. We usually have Brad in here. We call him Brad Brackets, but Brandon Brackets actually works very well. So we'll just continue that streak here. Brandon, we have an interesting situation this week. We could end up at, when all is said and done on Saturday, having Georgia, Tennessee, or Alabama as 2 lost teams. So as we're projecting forward, if that happens for any of those teams, whose path do you like the best to still make it into the playoff, even with those 2 losses?
I really love Georgia's path still very much, because their 2 losses would have been on the road against arguably top 5 teams when they played them. And then, of course, the rest of their schedule is conducive for a run. Their toughest game really remaining is on the road at Ole Miss. If Ole Miss can string together a couple of wins, bounce back a little bit, you're looking at a top 15 win on the road and then potentially securing a spot, depending on what else happens elsewhere, in the SEC championship game. That provides them an opportunity to potentially not have to slip up again. But if they do slip up again with 3 losses but make the SEC championship game, if that's their 3rd loss, maybe they still sneak in. But if they win the SEC championship, obviously they're in. I really like their schedule. Ole Miss is mortal, after all, as we've seen. And that's the toughest game remaining. They still have Tennessee, but that's in Athens. And I really like the way Georgia's been playing at home.
Yeah, Tennessee and Georgia is a game that we will circle as far as this conversation goes. Could be a 3rd loss for one of those teams, depending on what happens there. Elsewhere in the ACC, we've got Miami at Louisville. How can the result and what we see on the field impact your bracket in this one?
You know, Miami's schedule is pretty easy for all things considered, considering all the other teams in the top 5 battling it out in the SEC and Big Ten. But Miami's toughest games remaining are against Duke and at Syracuse, and getting past Louisville on the road might be their toughest opportunity here and one of their bigger wins on their strength of schedule. It seems like we're on a collision course between Miami and Clemson at this point in the ACC, but I do see some games here where they could potentially trip up. They have to go to Georgia Tech on November 9th. That's a potentially dangerous game. And then there's also some teams kind of waiting in the background, seeing someone to trip up potentially. I see those two teams with opportunistic opportunities here, with Pitt traveling to SMU and hosting Clemson still on the schedule, and SMU going to Duke and then hosting Pitt. Pitt and SMU are sitting in the shadows waiting for a mistake to happen. Those two teams, I think, are getting forgotten a little bit too much when we talk about the ACC championship race, and as a result, maybe making it into the playoff.
It's crazy looking at this Miami schedule. I mean, they haven't played a ranked team, and they probably won't for the rest of the season. So it does seem like they're on a crash course to make it to that ACC championship game. But we've seen the Hurricanes do some things we didn't expect them to do. So we'll see what happens in this one on Saturday. So you have Boise in. But I want to know, just looking at the rest of the Group of Five landscape, they're not playing this weekend, but who is waiting for the Broncos to mess up and to lose that second game to potentially get in to the playoff themselves?
Obviously, Army and Navy both undefeated for the first time since right after World War II. Incredible journey they have had, led by two amazing quarterbacks. They're sitting there potentially on a collision course for an undefeated matchup. Maybe if they can both get past Notre Dame in the final game after the AAC championship game. So we could potentially see Army and Navy face off 2 times in consecutive weeks. But outside that, a team that no one's really talking about because they lost a couple of weeks ago against Syracuse is UNLV, also in the Mountain West where Boise State is at. And by the way, Boise State has to go to UNLV next Friday night in a big matchup, the biggest matchup in the Group of Five yet. And UNLV's schedule has been very, very good for them, the strength of schedule-wise. They've already beaten 2 power conference teams, and now Friday tonight, they go on the road to Oregon State, where they are favorites. If they can beat Oregon State tonight and then host Boise State and then get the leg up on them in the Mountain West Conference Championship race, that makes them the top Group of Five team, I think, going in here the next 2 weeks. And then obviously we might see Boise State and UNLV once again in the Mountain West Conference Championship. So potentially a 2-round fight here between 2 heavyweights in the Group of Five.
You mentioned that game next week. On a week from today. It's a Friday night game, and you can watch it right here on CBS Sports Network. You talk about that Army-Navy predicament, right? They could play for the AAC championship game on December 6th, and then the bracket comes out on December 8th, and then the Army-Navy game on CBS is the following weekend. How would the playoff committee handle a chaos scenario like that?
They won't. They'll just ignore that game, the very final game. It's pretty much what's set up as more or less an exhibition, a spring practice, but one that is the most beautiful and awe-inspiring setting in all of college football between Army and Navy when they all get together. But it'll be pretty much, I think, more of a celebration of what those 2 service academies have done this season and what they haven't been able to do over the last 70 to 80 years. A long way to go till that. But that's the way to look at that if they both meet in the AAC championship game. That's for a spot in the playoff. And then after that, one of those teams would get in. And then the game after that would just be an exhibition, a celebration for all of us to enjoy what they've been able to do this season.
Which is what it usually is anyway. That game never has college football playoff implications, and it's still magical, and we still take it in, and we still love it. So looking forward to that one, but both of these teams still have to get through Notre Dame to end up in that scenario. It's just fun to daydream a little bit. Brandon Brackets, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. We appreciate it. You can read more of his work on 247sports.com. He and the entire crew have you covered on everything that is happening in the world of college football. Also, I know my recruiting folks love this. You can check out the latest recruiting and portal rankings on 247sports.com. Keep an eye on the SEC this weekend. We're about to learn a lot with 2 top 11 matchups on tap. And in the Big Ten, we've got Michigan and Illinois. We'll tell you what to watch for next. The CBS Game of the Week pits Michigan against Illinois, and we already played this game on EA College Football 25, and we simulated it 20 times to see who won the most. And the video game must be stuck in 2023 because it has Michigan winning 15 times on the road. The Illini disrespect here. Thankfully, there is just one game, and it will be played on CBS. And here to talk about this real game, it was fun to pretend for a little bit, guys, but this game will actually be played. We have Sam Webb from the Michigan Insider and Jeremy Werner from the Illini Inquirer. And guys, we're keeping it very simple. We're just talking matchups. We'll start with Michigan's offense versus Illinois' defense. And Sam, let's start with the unit that is just changing every week, it seems like.
No doubt, Emily. Yeah, another quarterback change for Michigan. Their third time that we're talking about another quarterback this season. But I'm not going to talk about the quarterback. I really think it's about the offensive line for Michigan in this game. If they can protect and give Jack Tuttle time, if they can protect and block for that running game, I think that's what it's all about. If they can get some solid play at the tackle position, and that means getting Miles Hinton back at left tackle and maybe getting Jeff Percy over at the right tackle position and getting solid play up front, that is going to be the key. Now you can run the football. Now you can maybe set up some play action and allow Jack Tuttle to take some shots, because Michigan has not gotten any chunk plays this season in the pass game. All their chunk plays this season, their explosive plays, have come in the running game, and they have got to get some explosives through the air. And it comes down to being able to block, being able to give that passing game some time to go down the field. That means the offensive line being able to protect. That is the big matchup, being able to protect that pressure from the Illini pass rush.
Well, Sam, Illinois wants it to be about the quarterback, right? The third quarterback for Michigan, one of the worst passing offenses in the Big Ten. They got to force Jack Tuttle to beat them. Jack Tuttle, over 4 years at Indiana, he started 5 games, 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in his career so far. So if you're Illinois, you want to see him try to be the one that can beat you. Now, that is easier said than done with Michigan's rushing offense, that big physical offensive line, and obviously that duo of Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards, who are explosive. Mullings obviously can break tackles, but Edwards can take one to the house at any moment. But Illinois really needs to stack the box because they have really struggled to stop the run so far this year. One of the worst Power 4 teams in stopping the run. But when you have an offense that struggles to pass the ball as much as Michigan, you hope they can force them to throw the ball. Because when they do, Michigan has put it in harm's way. And Illinois does have an opportunistic secondary that had 9 takeaways in the first 3 games, only won the last 3 games. But can they stop the run? That's the big question, because they got 239 yards to Penn State on the ground, and then a bad Purdue team had 239 yards on the ground as well. So I'm interested to see if we see more Alex Orji and Michigan just decides to run it down their throats. But Illinois has got to force some long third and longs here and force Michigan to throw the ball down the field.
Illinois coming off a game where they gave up the most points under Brett Bielema, but also they scored the most points against him or under him. So that leads me to my next question about this Illini offense versus the Michigan defense. Jeremy, what are your expectations for this game?
Yeah, Michigan's got a really good run defense, but they do have some issues in their secondary and their pass defense so far. So for Illinois to win this game, they need Luke Altmaier to play like a top-tier quarterback, which he has so far this season. He leads Power 5 quarterbacks right now in touchdown interception ratio at 14-1 so far, and he's really made a lot of plays with his legs, whether that's prolonging and finding his receivers downfield or just running for 90 yards and a touchdown against Purdue. So obviously Michigan with 2 guys who are going to go in the first round at defensive tackle, and Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, and with Illinois without their starting running back Caden Fagan, they're not going to run it up the middle and have success against this team. So Luke Altmaier in this passing attack, while Michigan has Will Johnson, a top 10 likely draft pick at corner, their other guys, Jair Hill and Zeke, have really struggled at covering. So Illinois has enough receivers outside of Pat Bryant with Zachary Franklin and Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty stepping up recently in the slot, that if they can get the ball to the outside, protect Luke Altmaier long enough, or maybe even have some quick hitters, they can find some success. But Illinois, where is their advantage here? It's at quarterback, and they need Luke Altmaier to play like a top-tier quarterback to beat Michigan.
Yeah, I look at situations. Michigan is beastly against the run. They have an outstanding front four. But when you get them in circumstances like third down and 7, third down and obvious passing situations, and pressure comes, and teams can kind of put them in situations where you're going to bring pressure or you're going to tempo them. That's where teams are starting to have some success. So I look at the matchup being tactical. So Barry Lunny against Wink Martindale. And are you going to see Wink Martindale make the adjustment where you prevent some of the busts that we've seen? That's what I want to see. Can you see them do a better job against tempo? Can you see them do a better job against formation to the boundary? Can you see them do a better job against RPOs? And Illinois is a good RPO team. Those are the things that I want to see Michigan tighten up against, particularly with their safeties and their nickels. If Michigan can do a better job of that coming out of the bye, they can win this game. And I expect with 2 weeks to prepare, they should be tightened up in those areas.
I love that you pointed that out. This is a really good coordinator matchup, too, that kind of game within the game. Thank you both so much for breaking this down for us. That's the kind of insight that you can only get on our 247 Sport team site network. Make sure to check out both of these team sites. You've got the Michigan Insider, the Illini Inquirer. I'm telling you, this is where you get the good, juicy information that you don't find nationally. Head to the MichiganInsider.com and Illini Inquirer for all things on your favorite team. It is a monster weekend, to say the least, in the SEC. So let's go ahead and transition in to that conference. Let's show you these standings right now. We've got the Texas teams at the top of the standings, along with LSU. Then we've got a logjam of one-loss teams, trying not to become two-loss teams this weekend. We're going to learn a lot. Our team site reporters have you covered with the biggest storylines ahead of the biggest games. First up, let's start at the top. Georgia at Texas.
Yeah, looking at Georgia going into this game, 5-1 overall, they're in a unique situation where they are the underdog. And that's the first time that's been the case since the 2021 season opener against Clemson. So I think Georgia sees opportunity. I think they've still got a bad taste in their mouths from that road loss to Alabama back in week 4. So I think Georgia sees that they got a big test. They're playing the number 1 team in the nation, and Georgia's got something to prove. They haven't had that in quite a while. I think Carson Beck has a chance to show out. It's going to take 60 minutes of hard-fought football, but I think the Bulldogs are excited and ready to show that they are still one of the teams to beat in the country.
This is a great opportunity for the Texas Longhorns to show that what they've actually put on film in getting to 6-0 is legitimate. And I'm really referring to the Texas defense because, yes, they're holding teams to 3 yards per carry on the ground, and they have the second-ranked pass defense in all of FBS. But the highest-ranked scoring offense Texas has faced is 71st. That's Mississippi State. Everyone else Texas has faced is below that. Now you get Georgia, ranked number 35 in scoring offense. You're playing an elite quarterback in Carson Beck. Let's see if this Texas defense, which has 11 sacks and 22 tackles for loss in the last 2 games against Mississippi State and Oklahoma, if they can carry that over against the Bulldogs. If they can, this could be a decisive victory for the Texas Longhorns.
Elsewhere in the SEC, it's the 3rd Saturday in October. Last time the series stopped in Neyland, a Vols win sent the fan base onto the field and into a frenzy. And it was a bad night to be a goalpost. Our team site experts break down what it'll take to light a cigar Saturday night in Knoxville.
Win in Knoxville and everything is right back on the table for Alabama. A trip to the SEC championship in Atlanta, a spot in the college football playoff. Remember, they have one of the best trump cards of the season with a win against Georgia. But lose and things get very shaky. 2 losses in conference play at this point of the season would be difficult to recover from when you consider how Texas is playing, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. There are a lot of contenders out there. But maybe more importantly is what happens internally at Alabama. Things get very shaky for a new coaching staff that's still trying to find its way, with a lot of true freshmen and transfers playing. They have not been playing their best football of late, losing at Vanderbilt, barely beating unranked South Carolina, lose to rival Tennessee, and the pressure ratchets way up with games against Missouri and LSU ahead.
Tennessee bounced back from its loss at Arkansas 2 weeks ago to escape against Florida in overtime last week. However, the loss in Fayetteville realistically took away Tennessee's margin for error in terms of the college football playoff. So this feels like a must-win game against Alabama for the Vols, who still have to go to Georgia in mid-November. The Vols have been led this season by a defense that has held all 6 opponents to under 20 points, something the program hasn't done since its 1998 national championship winning season. Tennessee has been adept at generating sacks, tackles for loss, and turnovers, and this defense has come up with timely stops on 3rd and 4th down and in the red zone as well. Tennessee's defense has picked up the slack for an offense that so far has lost its way in SEC play. Running back Dylan Sampson has been excellent with 5 100-yard games and 15 touchdowns on the ground, but passing game has become unreliable with redshirt freshman quarterback Nico Iamaleava struggling for consistency, plus shaky pass protection and what's now become a banged-up receiving core. The Vols again might have to ride their defense against Alabama if they want to be the ones lighting up the victory cigars come Saturday night.
Should be a fun Saturday. You can check out the work from all of these great team sites. You've got Dogs 24/7 for Georgia, Horns 24/7 for Texas coverage, Bama 24/7 for Alabama, and Go Vols 24/7 for all things Tennessee. The football doctor is in, and he is performing some mid-season checkups. What's the prescription for a second-half spark? And you want to sound really smart? Find out right now who the next stars of the sports are. That's coming up. Earlier this week, the 247 Sports scouting team released updated rankings for the 2025 class, but this is just a reminder of our team's track record. You're looking at the top-ranked player in the last 5 classes. We've got Bryce Young, Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith. Ever heard of him? So we ask, who is next? Let's find out. We bring in 2 members of our 247 Sports scouting team, Cooper Petagna and Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. And no change at the top in this class. We still have Bryce Underwood, but we do have top 3 quarterbacks now at 1, 2, and 3 for the first time. So, Andrew, I'll start with you. What do we need to know about these quarterbacks at the top?
We think they're very good, and I think we could see some of these guys playing here in 2025. Start with Bryce Underwood. Look, coming out of these summer months, out of the Elite 11 finals, we said Tavian St. Clair, who the Ohio State commit, was making a push for that number 1 position held by Bryce Underwood, the LSU commit. After the first 2 months of the senior season, however, I think Bryce Underwood has made it very, very clear that he is the top dog in this class. We're talking about a kid that has started 48 games. He's posted a 46-2 record. He's thrown for over 150 touchdowns, 10,000 plus yards. He just has a huge field command here as a senior. The other thing he's doing it with his legs. We've been searching for a player comp for him. We have settled on Vince Young. And I'm talking about Vince Young when he led Texas to a BCS national championship. Remember that Rose Bowl game where he's running around, also passing it. Bryce Underwood, we're big fans of. And then there's a third quarterback entering the mix. I'm sure Cooper's going to talk about him. Keelan Russell out of Texas. This guy doesn't put the football on the ground. He reminds us of Jaden Daniels, the former Heisman Trophy winner, who's doing it big right now in the NFL.
Yeah, to echo that, what Andrew's saying, I mean, you look at Bryce Underwood, Keelan Russell, 80-3 combined record throughout their high school careers. So you want future NFL players, obviously, at the quarterback position, but it starts with guys that get it done on Friday night, and that's what you look at in Underwood and Keelan Russell. The other guy we didn't talk about, how about Tavian St. Clair? 6'4", 225 pounds. Looks like he was built in a lab, and this guy's done a tremendous job from the time we saw him at the Elite 11 finals in Los Angeles over the summer to him being able to carry that on to Friday nights as well, completing over 66% of his passes. Reminds us a little bit of Justin Fields now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, another Ohio State Buckeye. And Justin Fields had all the physical tools you could possibly dream of. Tavian St. Clair not far behind. The instincts, the repetition, that is still to come on Saturdays, but he's going to a great spot, obviously throwing to guys like Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, Cornell Tate, and the rest of the gang over there at Zone 6.
I remember talking to you guys this summer after Elite 11, and Andrew, you were saying that Tavian St. Clair, after that performance, could make a push to surpass Bryce Underwood, but based on what we've seen in their senior seasons, you feel good about Bryce Underwood, number 1?
Yeah, we do for right now. Look, I mean, with Bryce Underwood, you put on the tape, and I keep using this analogy. It's like he's playing EA Sports 2025, the video game. He's played it on freshman level. Everyone else in the country is playing it on Heisman difficulty. Things have slowed down. His ability to toy with the defenders, I mean, it reminds me of what Cam Ward is doing for Miami this season. You just see the confidence. And what's crazy, he's one of the youngest prospects in the entire class. He could technically be in the class of 2026. We're supposed to get all three of these quarterbacks in the All-Star game, so we'll see where it happens. But right now, Underwood at the top, but those two guys behind him, we like them just as much. Keelan Russell, he too has a chance at that #1 posting.
Whew. Love to see that competition continue to heat up. Looking at this class overall, we talk about positional strengths, right? Last year, it was clearly the wide receivers. We're seeing what they're doing in college football as freshmen this year. So, Coop, I'll start with you. What are the positional strengths of the 2025 class?
I'm going to go with offensive line. You look at last year's class, there was only one offensive tackle with a 5th star next to his name. That was Jordan Seaton, who leads all freshmen in the snap count with over 420 at this point. But you look at this crop right here, there are 6 offensive tackles ranked inside the top 32. There's an interior offensive lineman with Michael Carroll there as well. So if you're looking for beef, now is a year to get it. You look at guys like Lamont Rogers entering the 5-star range for us. This is a tackle class that we have been very spoiled by, and a guy like David Sanders has been the #1 tackle in the country. Looks like he's got a pretty good shot at going coast to coast with that thing. Guys like Andrew Babalola, Michael Fasusi, Ty Haywood, you go down the line. Josh Petty committed to Georgia Tech. I'm going to talk about him in a second, but these guys are really, really hard to find. So to have these names kind of stacked at the board, it's a real treat for us. And like Andrew alluded to, the majority of these guys will get to be able to see in either San Antonio at the All-American Bowl or in Orlando at the Under Armour game. And we got them in the right neighborhood right now, but we want to get them in the right house. So we can still see some jockeying here over the next couple months.
It's certainly the year, Cooper, if you're a team out there, right? You don't want to pay in the transfer portal for a high-profile offensive tackle. Hey, get one from the high school ranks. Let them get in there and be baptized by fire. I love that pick. I'm going to go with tight ends, right? And it's more of a late blooming position. Emily, you know, we always talk about these big athletic freaks and how they get to the NFL. Well, we're feeling really confident about this group. You see Lincoln Cure up there, committed to Kansas State. He plays small town football in the middle of Kansas, but he's a multi-sport athlete. He can dunk the football. Reminds us a little bit of Sam Laporta. And if you dig into the high school tape, you dig into the profile, those two are near identical. Both of them playing wide receiver and defensive back their senior seasons. Andrew Olesh, he's headed to Michigan, a big riser for us. You know, the Wolverines are going to lose Colton Loveland, who is by far one of their best pass catchers there in Ann Arbor. Talking with some people inside those buildings, they think Andrew Olesh has a chance to come in and push for playing time right away. So we'll see. I mean, I can go down this list. James Flanagan headed to Notre Dame. Love him. He was the guy who was on my freaks list. Thomas Meyer headed to Iowa. If I had to bet on any prospect in the class of 2025 to play in the NFL, it would probably be Thomas Meyer. You also got Marshall Pritchett committed to North Carolina. Sounds like he might flip to Alabama. Really good group of tight ends to follow up that wide receiver class we had in 2024.
7 offensive linemen considered 5 stars, 1 tight end 5-star in Lincoln Cure. But let me remind the viewers here that this is based on the first round of the NFL draft. So we don't see a lot of tight ends go that early anyway. Final question here. After this update, we're starting to look at some teams that are maybe some risers, some fallers. But overall, who are some classes, Andrew, that we should keep an eye on?
I think it's Oregon. Look, the Ducks arrived this past weekend under Dan Lanning, taking down Ohio State in dramatic fashion. I think if you're in the Big Ten, you should be a little bit concerned because Dan Lanning isn't going away. We saw him last year sign the nation's #3 ranked recruiting class. Right now in the class of 2025, Oregon is sitting #9. I would bet a good amount of money that they're going to finish in the top 5, and I think there's a runway, an avenue there for them to potentially get to #1. Remember, Dan Lanning, he loves to light up the cigar on signing day to celebrate all those last-minute flips. Oregon has some logs on the fire. Some guys are going to try to pry away, and if they're in the college football playoff conversation, it's going to get that much easier. The recruiting class they have right now, 2 new 5 stars, guys that moved up that are committed to the Ducks. Dallas Wilson, a wide receiver. Brandon Finney, a cornerback. That is the strength, the perimeter playmakers. We love what they have committed. And the defensive backfield, they got 2 5-star wide receivers, Wilson and DeCorian Moore. DeCorian Moore reminds us a little bit of Zay Flowers, you know, a mighty might that can extend catch and run opportunities. Really good group. And I think for Oregon, it's nowhere close to being done. We're going to be talking about them a lot over the next 6 weeks.
All right, you guys ready for this? I'm going to go with Georgia Tech. Who would have thought? They got a top 20 class right now, Brent Key. They got it rolling. And you look at Georgia Tech, they got 5 guys inside the top 247. And they have a 5-star in Josh Petty, a guy that we like, that we think could potentially play all 5 positions on the offensive line. Outside of that, top 100 player, Dalen Pinson, maybe one of our favorite players in the class. Two-way guy, kind of reminds me a little bit of Terry Bussey last year. A little bit smaller, but love the versatility. Probably going to be a nickel guy on defense. Very dynamic in the return game as well. Christian Garrett, a big defensive lineman out of the state of Georgia, too. Long arms, almost a 7-foot wingspan. You add in guys like Rashawn Dinkins, J.P. Powell, go down the list. They have some dudes there. Carrington Combs. Brent Key is not only doing a phenomenal job with the top of his roster, but the way that he's building through high school, supplementing with the transfer portal. Georgia Tech is not just one of those schools you look at right now and say, oh, that's a nice one-off season there. I think they're going to be a factor in the ACC for years to come. In a couple years, I think we'll be looking back on this 2025 recruiting class as a big reason why.
I like it. Georgia Tech, little out there pick, seeming to have a great start to their 2025 class. Oregon, though, they're the #1 team in the nation right now, and we look at them, we go, oh, they're going to be good forever now, it seems like, for the future. But thank you guys so much for all the great work you do behind the scenes with these rankings. Of course, you can check those out at 247sports.com. But if you want more of these two, I got the podcast for you. You can check them out on the 105 podcast. You can watch Mondays right here on CBS Sports Network at 2 Eastern and Wednesdays at 1 Eastern on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Also, it's a podcast, so listen wherever you find them. So those are the players. Now, where are they headed this weekend? Our reporters have you covered on the big visit weekends at Mizzou with Sean Williams, Tennessee with Ryan Callahan, and Texas with Hank South. Sean, take it away.
Yeah, Missouri's got a big SEC showdown with Auburn this weekend, and they won't have a lot of visitors in on campus, but the one significant one they'll have to be taking an official visit and is uncommitted currently is Toby Hastraub, the rising senior edge rusher out of Texas. Obviously, phenomenal story with him. Born and raised in London, he's come over here to the States. He's played soccer his whole high school career until this year is his first year playing football, and he's racked up a bunch of Power 4 offers. He's just coming off an official visit to Boston College last weekend. Missouri will get their chance to kind of woo him this weekend, but he's going to be pretty busy. He's going to explore all of his options. He's got official visits lined up to Ole Miss, Florida State, Texas Tech, and Virginia after this Missouri visit, so we'll see what happens there. That being said, now let's head over to Ryan Callahan at Tennessee.
Thanks, Sean. Massive recruiting weekend expected at Tennessee with the Vols playing host to number 7 Alabama. It's a huge opportunity for Tennessee to get a number of players on campus across multiple classes, and it looks like this weekend is going to live up to the hype in that regard. An impressive list of visitors, headlined by some official visitors, including 4-star class of 2025 defensive lineman Isaiah Campbell. He's a top 50 prospect nationally out of Durham, North Carolina, a former Clemson commitment, and since he reopened his recruitment last month, Tennessee has been widely viewed as the favorite to land him. So it goes without saying this is a big opportunity for the Vols to maybe continue to build on their momentum and start to push that one toward the finish line if they can impress him this weekend. And then in the 2026 class, 4-star edge rusher Rodney Dunham, another highly ranked player out of the state of North Carolina that Tennessee has had on campus before, now a chance to impress him on a game day with what should be a great environment inside Neyland Stadium. Now let's hear from Hank South over at Texas.
Thanks, Ryan. Huge weekend on deck in Austin for Texas and Georgia. Dozens of top commits, targets expected in attendance. I think one guy to watch that's most intriguing to me is Justice Terry, the 5-star defensive lineman from Manchester, Georgia, a guy that Texas really hasn't started to take a swing at until the last few weeks. Got him to come in on an official visit this weekend. Obviously a one-time USC commit, a one-time Georgia commit. I know the Bulldogs are favored right now in the crystal ball to get him back into the fold, but we'll see what happens with Texas this weekend if they can make a move in his recruitment. Obviously they're still on the search for some interior defensive linemen. And then of course, Michael Terry, you can't not mention him. Second visit this season, the 5-star athlete from San Antonio. A guy that Texas likes on the offensive side of the ball, kind of been compared to a Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, Roshan Johnson type. Big-time target, and Texas would obviously love to, get him on board in this class. Obviously trending on the crystal ball, but still battling Oregon and Nebraska for his commitment.
Thank you all. You can check out their sites for the latest on your favorite teams and find out how these visits went. Our guys, they do talk to the prospects. They give you their thoughts. Also, be sure to check out new to the network, powermizzou.com. The football doctor is in. He joins us next with some mid-year checkups. Stay with us. We have officially hit the midway point of the season, which means it's time for some checkups. So we're bringing in our resident football doctor, Smoke FD, to tell us what some teams need to maybe take or do this weekend to finish the second half of the season strong. Speaking of strong, that is a strong headshot there. And here he is now, Smoke Dixon, a.k.a. Smoke FD. Also, his resume includes, actually, no doctor involved here, but he is a former Power 5 general manager, so is absolutely qualified to talk about what some of these teams should do. Let's start with a monster matchup in Knoxville. We've got Alabama at Tennessee. Focusing on your Tide here. I'm not sure if the viewers at home can tell, but based on some of the stuff you got behind you, he did go to Alabama and played there once or twice. So what is the prescription this Saturday, both to get a win and to continue to finish out the season strong?
Well, Emily, I don't even know if I'm saying this right. It's even coming out of my mouth properly. Bama needs to play better defense. When have we ever heard that in the last 17 years? They're ranked in the 50s and the 60s on defense. Now, what's suffering with Bama on defense? The lack of gap integrity within their run game. You're seeing guys being able to run up the middle, to the side. Guys aren't getting off block. Their linebackers aren't doing a good job of flowing and keying the running back or quarterback and getting to the runners and getting down to the ground. Now, when you look on the back end, they are having multiple busts, poor eye discipline, explosive down the field. The comeback against Georgia had two guys running free, and they just threw it from ball. Went to the Vanderbilt game, same thing. So the lack of communication, the lack of gap integrity on defense, and eye discipline on the back end. Bama just needs to play better defense.
I need you out there, Smoke. We were talking before we came on that this seems like a Freaky Friday incident where Tennessee has the better defense and Alabama probably has the better offense right now. So definitely a lot to improve for them. Speaking of offense, the CBS game of the week is Michigan and Illinois. So what do the Wolverines need to do to get a win and hopefully finish out the rest of the season strong?
They got to find a way to pass the ball. They got to get a passing game. Now they went through three quarterbacks. They went to Davis Warren, Alex Orji. Now they're back to Jack Tuttle. How are they going to find a way to create explosive plays on offense? Yes, they can run the ball at a high level, but running the football only controls it and runs time out. Having to complete 12 to 15 play drives and execute those, sometimes you can't do that. So at some point, they have to get somebody on the outside, create separation, and also get a quarterback that can complete a ball with accuracy, timing, and precision in order to get this Michigan thing rolling again.
I don't know if they can get a quarterback at this point in the season, but they will trot out Jack Tuttle, their third quarterback of the season. We'll see if that helps them there. Meanwhile, let's go to undefeated Indiana. I had to say that slowly so it could fully sink in. They've got a really tough test, though, this weekend against Nebraska. Now, a lot of people are saying that this is not going to last with the Hoosiers, right? This is just lightning in a bottle here to start the season, but you've done some research. What is it about this team that makes them a contender?
Well, A, they can throw the ball and execute on a high level. Kurt Cignetti hit it a gold mine with getting Cool Hand Curtis Ford in the transfer portal. This guy's a veteran that's done it. He's top 5 in passing efficiency, top 5 in passing yards. But one thing that he does real well, he takes care of the football. And when you're running the RPO with a great quarterback coach such as Kurt Cignetti, you have to be able to execute at a high level with precision, timing, accuracy. And this guy's doing it at a high level. And when you talk about passing game, everyone will say, well, they can get the ball out to the receivers and they can do this in terms of the passing game. But one thing that they're doing real well is they're protecting the passer. And when you're protecting the passer, that has to do a ton with the way that you're calling the game, with Kurt Cignetti doing a fantastic job, but also the quarterback being a veteran and being able to set protection and also running that RPO and giving them less time to get to him as a quarterback.
All right, super quick. Let's end with another undefeated team, Iowa State facing UCF. Similar situation here. So what's your professional opinion on Iowa State?
Lock down you. They have 3 DBs with 2 interceptions, 10 picks overall. They continue to play the strapped-up defense. They'll be perfectly fine.
All right, looking forward to all these big matchups this weekend. Doctor, thank you so much for all of these mid-season checkups. We appreciate it. You can check out more of his work and the work from our entire 247 Sports team on the YouTube page. You can hear from our network of insiders, analysts, scouts. We've got live shows, game breakdowns, other unique content. Thank you so much for watching today. Check out the 247 Sports YouTube page and enjoy the games.